a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see she respects her husband. Let us stand and be prepared to be led in prayer by Brother Larry Gaston.
Let us pray. Dear Father God, we thank you for this opportunity you've given us to return again to offer up a worship service unto thee. Dear Father, we thank you for your blessings from our beginning up into this very moment. We pray, Father, that you will be with us and guide us, that you will fill our hearts with the love of Christ, that we might know how to love one another. Dear Father, we ask that you will be with us in this hour as we think about those that are sick and shut in, having difficulties in their families, that are bereaved by the loss of loved ones. We ask your blessings to be handed out to them, Father, that you will comfort them and that you will heal those that you see fit, that they might be with us in worship once again. Father, we ask that you will be with our minister of the evening. Bring to his memory those things that you would have us to learn from his word. We thank you, Father, for forgiveness of our sins. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Before our brother Mitchell comes before us with the message, we're going to sing Love Lifted Me.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Love lifted me. If we're ready. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply staying within, seeking to rise no more. But the master of the sea heard my despairing cry. From the waters lifted me, now say, am I? You know that love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could, it was love that lifted me. Singing that love lifted me. Love lifted even me. When nothing else could help, it was love that lifted me. All my heart to him I give, ever to him I cling. In his blessed presence live, ever his praises sing. Love so mighty and so true merits my soul's best song. Faithful love in service to him belong. You know that love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, it was love that lifted me. Singing about love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, it was love that lifted me. Souls in danger, look above. Jesus completely saved. He will lift you by his love out of the angry way.
opportunity to stand before God's people, to share a word from the Lord, to strengthen the saints of God, to encourage the downtrodden, to uplift the brokenhearted, as a blessed privilege, regardless of whether it's in the AM or the PM.
Yes.
I'm going to give you the very best I have.
Amen. Amen.
I even had one encourage me to remind me there is a time limit. Some folk can't handle too much preaching in the evening.
All right.
So I'm going to have to write another book.
Yes, sir. Sound like a good one.
This month is going to be filled with encouragement for those who are thinking about being married, those who are married, or who are struggling to stay married. It will be filled with much encouragement to help us make sure our marriages are where God intended them to be.
Yes, sir.
This evening's message is going to be broken up into 5 segments, focusing on a truth about marriage. Because I've been reminded of how much time I have, I may not get to all 5, but I will give you all that I got.
All right.
In the time that I have been given.
There you go.
Ephesians chapter 5. In this epistle to the church at Ephesus, Paul spends quite a bit of time focusing on the marriage between a husband and a wife, the challenges that husbands and wives face in a deep relationship that is pleasing and acceptable in the sight of God.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He goes into much detail on how to strengthen each other, how to lift each other up. But he also tells us some things we should be mindful, we should be aware of, some things that can creep in and create havoc when we don't do things the way God says do them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ephesians chapter 5, verse 20. Giving thanks always for all things unto God and the Father, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting yourselves one to another
Yes, sir.
in the fear of God. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself.
Yes, sir.
For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cleanseth, cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church.
Yes, sir.
For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bone.
Yes, sir. That's it.
For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery. But I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself. And the wife see that she reverence or respect her husband. If you have been paying attention to the news in recent years, It is easy to get confused on what is true and what is real anymore with all the alternative or alternate truths, virtual reality, personal realities, or even reality TV.
Yes, sir.
All this confusion being sprayed across every news medium and every other TV channel is getting harder to find what is true and what is real anymore when it comes to love and marriage. Some of us even got caught up with the rest of the world a few years ago, or maybe a couple of years ago now, with a fairy tale wedding of a famous American actress and a royal prince. And she became a royal duchess. And as real as it was, and as inspiring as it is, it can distort our reality of what a wedding is about and how marriage should be. So, for as much as we can, let's focus our attention on the truth about marriage. Truth number one. The truth about marriage is you can inspire the love you desire in your spouse. We look back at verse 32, this great mystery that Paul speaks about concerning Christ and the church. He says we need to leave father and mother and cleave to our spouse.
Yes.
We are to be reminded that we are now part of this body, this church, this bride. We are now bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh.
Yes, sir.
Brother King did a fine job this morning bringing that out in Genesis chapter 2. But we're reminded of that again here
Yes, sir.
in Ephesians chapter 5, that we belong to the Lord.
Yes.
I like how you put emphasis on us being tied or belonging to our spouse.
Yes, sir.
Bone of bone and flesh of flesh. We are now one. Here's the challenge. Verse 33, let every one of you in particular so love his wife. Usually when we talk about love in marriage, we tend to focus way too much on the romantic side of the love.
Thank you, Robert.
Not realizing that there are more than one aspect to this concept, yet this spirit we call love.
Yes, sir.
Remember, John tells us that God is love.
Yes, he is.
Jesus reminds us that God is a spirit. And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So that's why I say that the term love has more than one aspect.
Yes.
Even though God is the true source of love. Love is a spirit. And when we think about the if I can use this word, multiplicity or many aspects of love,
Yes.
we cannot get caught up, boxed in, focusing on love and marriage as just being romantic.
That's right.
Because when he says, husbands, love your wife, even as himself, he's not talking about romantic love.
No, sir. No.
He's talking about a need-providing love.
Yes, sir.
A love that creates a desire to want to supply every need. When we think about every time we see God's word talking about how God loves us, it is always in an action. Love is always in an action when it comes from God. It is providing a need. It is removing obstacles. It is creating a way for us to be close to him and to spend eternity with him. So when he says, husbands, love your wives,
All right, I got you.
he's encouraging us to provide for her every need. Remove obstacles from her being with us and being happy and being whole and being well with us. Now, I normally say this at the beginning of most of my messages when I talk about marriage. And this is a good time for me to say this. There is no such thing as a perfect marriage.
All right.
There is no such thing as a perfect marriage. Now, some of us may think of ourselves individually as being perfect.
All right. All right. Yeah.
And we won't leave the house until everything is perfected. And we'll even falsify some things for it to look perfect. But there is no such thing as a perfect marriage. And sometimes we falsify things to make our marriage look better than what it really is. We put on a facade, a mask for those that see us so they think we got it all together. When in reality, we are struggling to keep it together. And we're barely holding on. And we're just one wrong look from leaving the house for good.
All right.
The challenge is for us to realize that the only perfect marriage will be that when the Lord comes back for his bride. And he will present her to himself without wrinkle, without blemish, without spot or any such thing. Then we will be perfect. Mm-hmm. And we will be presented as a perfect bride to the Savior, the groom. And we will have a perfect marriage throughout eternity, being bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. We belong to the Lord.
Amen.
So the challenge is for husbands to love your wives like you love yourself. He clarified that. We provide our needs, husbands. We make sure we have what we need. And most of us, truth be told, as men, we don't need much. It don't take a whole lot to make us happy. But the challenge is, we do what it takes to make sure we're happy. And the challenge is, do we do what it takes to make our spouse happy? Truth be told, you can't make grown folks do anything, but you can inspire greatness in anyone. And you can inspire the love you desire in your spouse. The question that needs to be addressed for this truth, are you emotionally equipped to inspire love for a lifetime? Some of us, when we got married, we weren't emotionally equipped to be married and to stay married.
Right.
We didn't know what it took to stay married. We thought we did because we thought all I needed to do was get a ring, pick a date, pick an outfit, and we'll jump the broom. But marriage is far more than just a wedding day.
Yes, it is.
Marriage is far more than just a symbolic gold ring. Marriage is much more than when we say, I do. Because when you say, I do, God's going to hold you accountable. So you show enough better. What is love? Simply put, 1 John 4, verse 8, God is love. Whether we see God showing his love for us, it is wherever we see God showing his love for us, it is always in an action. And we must be shown how to love. Remember, we love God because he first loved us. 1 John chapter 4, verses 15 through 21. So, true love, real love is inspired love. Well, one might ask, how do you inspire the love you desire in your spouse? I'm glad you asked. You can inspire the love you desire in your spouse by doing the things that are love. The concept is really simple, but the practical application is where many of us lose focus, fortitude, and faith. The concept is simple. Love is as love does. Everybody say love is, as love does. Love is as love does. It's pretty simple. The challenge is the practical application. So we must do the things that are love, and love will grow. Love is as love does. So do the things that are love, and love will grow. Consider this as a love test. Love reminisce. In Genesis chapter 29, verse 20, when Jacob looked back over the years it took for him to gain the hand of Rachel in marriage, it seemed to him as only a few days. He served 7 years for Leah. He was tricked and was given Leah. Served 7 more years to gain Rachel's hand. And all in all, he served Laban, his uncle, 20 years for his wives and his children and all that he had. But when he looked back over the 20 years he spent with his bride and to gain her hand and his family and all that they possessed, he told her it was like only a few days. See, real love, true love takes some work. But if we do it right, it's worth it. Looking back, sometimes we forget why we said I do. We forget that how much work we put into buying flowers, buying candy, phone calls, notes, little reminders, little mementos, little keepsakes. We forget about all those things after so many fights. We forget about all those things after so many heartbreaks and disappointments. We forget about all those things and those reasons why we originally said I do, because of all we went through just to stay where we are. The challenge is to remember why, because when you remember why you said I do, you can remember why you wanted to.
All right. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So today, remember why you wanted to marry your spouse in the beginning and what you did to win their heart and their hand in marriage. Now, to inspire love you desire in your spouse, revive those things you did in the beginning. Remix and reinitiate those things. Remember those things that you did to create love in the first place.
All right. Yeah.
So we get caught up in that romantic love when we think about that. But remember, you did something to make that romantic love happen. You provided a service. You supplied a need. And you even supplied some desires.
Yes,
Remember the love. Remember, love is as love does. So do the things that are love, and love will grow. Truth number 2. Marriage is hard work.
You're right.
If you do it right, it's hard work.
Yes, it is.
There is no such thing as a perfect marriage. But to make any marriage work, it takes hard work. And because there won't be a perfect marriage until we get to heaven and meet the Lord in the air, we all got some work to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Many of us are like Jacob. Once again, Genesis 29 verse 20, put in a lot of work to win our spouse's heart and hand in marriage, but failed to continue to keep up the good work after we said I do. Because we actually meant, I'll try. We said I do, but we really meant, I'll try. When we say I'll try, we leave room for failure. We leave room for excuses. We leave room for Satan to come and wreak havoc on our marriage and in our lives. When we say I do, you show enough better.
All right.
Because God will hold you accountable for that. Regardless of whether you mean I do or I'll try. God holds us accountable to our word. The interesting thing about this is that it is not conditional. If you act right, then I'll act right. If you come home when you're supposed to, then I'll come home when I'm supposed to. If you cook dinner, then I'll wash the dishes. If you do the laundry, then I'll take out the trash. Sometimes we are so used to making deals and bargains and everything else in our life, we bring that same concept in our marriage. And that is not what God intended.
No, sir. No, sir.
Actually, God's going to hold us accountable to how we act regardless of how our spouse conducts themselves in our marriage.
Yes, sir. That's right.
So if they're not a good spouse, there's no excuse for you not to be a good spouse. Some of us withhold our goodness. Because of our spouses' badness. And God is not pleased.
No, sir. No, sir.
Some of us are not going to make it to heaven, not because we mistreated our neighbor, not because we stole, not because we committed murder, not because we had a foul mouth, but because we mistreated our spouse. God is serious. The truth about marriage, God is serious about how we treat our spouse.
Yes, he is, brother. Yes, sir.
When you say I do, regardless of what your spouse does or becomes, God expects you to keep your end of the commitment. That includes for worse, for poorer, in sickness, till death do us part. Not just for the better, for the richer, and in health. Anyone can go along for the ride when the ride is nice and smooth. Everybody's getting along. And yeah, we can enjoy that ride. But the challenge is when the ride is rough. True commitment, focus, fortitude, and faith is displayed when you hang in there when the ride is rough and bumpy along the way. So when you say I do, you show no better. As beautiful as marriage can be, the beauty of it doesn't happen by accident or happenstance.
All right.
The beauty of it comes from hard work, putting in real sweat equity. The things in life that we value the most, we put in the work to make them happen. What matters most to us must never get the least of us. We tend to give the whole world the best of us. And at the end of the day, we will give our spouse, our love, what is left of us. That is right. Our love deserves more. Our spouse deserves more. You have to save some of that greatness that is in you, that everyone thinks is so wonderful, for your love when you get home. It is a shame for everyone to think you are so awesome and your love to think very little of you because you give your love so very little of you. You can identify what your priorities are based on by how you spend your time, your money, and where you invest your effort in them. Think of how you spend the bulk of your time in your day. When you are not working, where does your time go? When you have a choice of where to spend your time, how much of it goes to your spouse? Does your spouse feel that they have to negotiate to get your time? How often does your spouse win some of your time? When you're with your spouse, how do you spend time together? Do you give them top priority? Do they hold the number one spot in your heart and in your schedule? As my father would say, balance is the key. It doesn't do you any good to gain the whole world or to save the whole world and lose your own family. His voice rings like a bell in my head when I see my priority of my wife slip from her number one spot. To remedy this, communicate your schedule with each other. Then over-communicate it again. Share your calendar and send each other calendar invites for you with smartphones that have all that fancy stuff buzzing at inconvenient times. Look for ways to incorporate each other in your activities. But always work to spend some quality time together at the end of the day, if only just to tell each other about your day. Remove any distractions during this time, like TV, the computer, your smartphone, whatever the case may be. Make time to just talk with each other. Stephen Covey, the author of many books, talks about what matters most should never be at the mercy of what matters the least.
All right.
Finding the balance is the key, but it's definitely not easy. Make sure your spouse feels like a top priority in every aspect of your life and save your best for your love. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also, Matthew 6:21.
All right.
Show your spouse that you treasure your marriage. and put your heart into the work of making your marriage beautiful. Truth about marriage, there's more time that I would like to spend talking about these truths that you're actually willing to give me. Right? I know I could go on and on. I got more tips than I know what to do with. Some of them I actually give away for free. But let me take you back to the text. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33 again. Nevertheless, that every one of you in particular love his wife even as himself. That is not a romantic love. It is a need-supplying love. When you give your wife all that she needs, regardless of whether she's a good wife or not, you do your part anyway. The flip side of that, wife, see that you reverence or respect your husband. Regardless of if he's loving you like you need, respect him anyway. You're respecting him not because of the great man that he is, but because of your commitment to God.
Yes, sir.
Because in the end, God is not going to ask you, well, I understand he wasn't a good husband, so I'm not going to hold you accountable to all that you didn't do as a spouse. No, sir. No, ma'am. Adam tried that excuse. And it didn't work for him.
No, sir.
When God asked him, why did you hide from me? We ate the fruit. Well, who told you to eat the fruit? It was that wife you gave me. Well, you know what happened? He punished the husband and the wife and the serpent that started it. So they all got it in the end. And we're all going to have to deal with it on our end, whether or not we're doing our part. Whether you're loving your wife with a need-supplying love, making sure that she feels loved and she has the number one spot in your life. Or whether or not you're loving, you're respecting your husband to the point that he feels respected, like Sarah did with Abraham. She called him Lord. Man, can you imagine how respected Abraham must have felt for his wife to call him Lord? Now don't make me to call me Lord, but a good yes sir will do everything. I like a good yes sir. I like a good yes sir. That does something for me right there. Yeah, and every now a good King Robin works well too. But when we do our part, you love your wife and supply her needs, she will respect you even more. You'll make it easier for her to respect you. You'll make her want to respect you. Actually, she'll brag on you. You see what he did? You see what he's got me wearing? You see what he's got me driving? When you learn to supply not only the needs but desires too, you get more. You literally get more on the return than you invested. I cannot. Time will not allow me to express that enough. When you give out of love, you always get more on the return than you invested.
Yes, sir.
That's a principle God supplies.
That's right.
You plant one seed, you don't know how many.
That's right. That's it.
You can count the seeds in an apple, but you can't count the apples in the seed. So once you plant the seed of love, you have no idea how that seed is going to bring forth fruit that will make life sweeter for you. But that respect aspect, it's going to be real. It's going to be some gate trouble for some sisters on the day of judgment. Because you married and done it. And you won't let him forget it. Because no matter how dumb he is, you said I do. So you show no better. You better respect him. Paul says respect him as you respect the Lord. So I expect a good yes sir every now and again. But I'm not going to ask for it. Because I'm going to love her enough that she's going to want to say yes, sir, anyway. And a good King Robert every now and then tells me without even requesting. Here's the challenge. To not say it. To take self out of it. The truth about marriage, many marriages fall apart because I'm being selfish. When you peel back all the excuses why you did this, why they did that, all these excuses why, the bottom line is somebody's being selfish. Whenever we have problems in our marriage, somebody was being selfish. Until we learn how to be selfless, you're going to keep having problems. Some of us are giving so much of ourselves, there's nothing left. And nothing's being filled. We feel empty in our marriage.
Yes, we do.
And we're struggling to find how to make things work. I thank God that He knows that where our struggles lie.
Yes, sir.
And where our emptiness is. When we allow Him to fill it, we take it to Him. And we look through His Word to find out how to make our marriages better. What can I do to do? Because as long as you're holding them, well, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. As long as you're doing that, you will never be happy. As long as you're pointing out all their failures, faults, and frailties, you'll never be happy. But when you learn to focus on my failures, my faults, my frailties, because I can't make my spouse do anything, but I can make myself be a better spouse.
Yes, sir. Amen.
I can make myself do more than I've done in the past. I can make myself, I can discipline myself. So whether I'm in a sexless marriage, there's no excuse for me to go out and satisfy my selfish needs. For better, for worse, in sickness. Discipline myself to make sure I am doing my part to fulfill my spouse's needs. And God will be pleased.
Amen.
And God will make life better and sweeter for you in your marriage. But as long as you point the finger at them, and you looking at them with the side, and you talking bad about them every chance you get, you'll never be happy. And you will never bring back healing to your brokenness in your marriage. Fix you. Work on your part. And pray that God will help you be the best spouse you can be. And it will get better. As long as you do the things that will make it better. It will get better. It works. I've seen it work. I've done it.
Yes, sir.
And that's why I call my wife Sweetness, because I know it works. When you feel like giving up, don't. We have multiple marriages that have been together for over 50 years.
Yes, sir.
We have plenty of good examples. How did y'all stay together? How did you make it work? I don't know what to do because I'm ready to leave now. What can I do? Here's the problem when you ask, what can I do? Don't ask somebody that's figured out how to make it work and figured out what to do and figured out how to make it better and get to that point where they can brag on how wonderful their spouse is. Don't ask them, what can I do? And they tell you and you don't do it. What you ask if you're not going? If you're not willing to put in the work, don't ask. I'm gonna have to stop. I'm gonna have to stop. Here's the beauty of this. God knows that everybody has some places that need to be filled in your marriage. God knows that the struggle we had and the sacrifices we made. The beautiful thing about that is it's worth the sacrifice. Because when He comes back again, when He says, well done, my good and faithful servant, you've been faithful over a few things. Let your marriage be one of those things you've been faithful of. faithful in and faithful toward the Lord and making sure you've given all that you can to make heaven your home. Christ says we are now bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh because we belong to him. If you're not a Christian, you don't belong to him.
That's right.
And you can't make heaven your home until you do. Tonight, become betrothed to the one true Savior, the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, Jesus. By rendering obedience to his gospel, you need to hear that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Matthew 10, 32 and 33, you need to believe it to be true. Repent of your sins, confess Jesus to be the Son of God. Matthew 10, 32 and 33, and then be baptized for the remission of your sins. Acts 2 and verse 38. Live a life faithful until death. And that includes your spouse.
Yes, sir.
I didn't get to talk about being joint heirs. But if you got time, I'll tell you, I don't believe I can make it to heaven without my spouse. Because we are joint heirs. We are heirs together. He talked about that in Ephesians chapter 5. He said we are heirs together. And I cannot inherit my inheritance without my partner.
That's right.
I don't know about you, but I believe according to his word, I can't make it without her. Joint heirs. And he said this is a great mystery because he's speaking concerning Christ and the church.
That's right.
So when you look at it like that, we can't make it to heaven without Christ.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's coming together for you. I know some of those people will get there eventually, hopefully before the Lord comes back. But if you're not a Christian today, you need to. You need to be a child of God, rendering obedience to the gospel. Why don't you stand and come as we stand and sing a song of encouragement? The Savior says, come.
Oh, at the door is standing, patiently joy.